The Empire's arrival, the stars above. Earth shimmered as they always had, but on this night something new lurked among them. Massive warships, dark as the void, moving silently through space. The Galactic Empire had arrived. Admiral Siren, a towering figure with 4 glowing eyes, stood on the bridge of his command ship. He stared at the blue-green planet below, unimpressed. He had conquered 100 worlds, and to him Earth looked no different from the others. The humans would surrender just like the rest. His second-in-command, Commander Reek, stood beside him, smirking. They don't even have interstellar travel, Admiral. This will be over before it even begins. Siren nodded. Send a warning. Tell them they belong to the Empire now. A deep, echoing voice broadcasted across Earth's communication network. People of Earth, your planet is now part of the Galactic Empire. Surrender peacefully, and you will be spared. Resist, and you will be destroyed. Across Earth, panic spread. Governments scrambled for answers. Civilians stared at the sky, wondering if this was a joke. But in the shadows, Earth's leaders and military already had a plan. The response in a secret underground base. General Ethan Cole leaned over a holographic map. Around him, the best minds of Earth. Military leaders, scientists, and strategists whispered urgently. They had been preparing for this day for years. A younger officer, Lieutenant Saw, clenched her fists. They think we're weak, she said. They have no idea what we're capable of. General Cole nodded. We will give them one warning, just one. A message was sent back to the invader fleet. The transmission was short and clear. Leave now. This is your only warning on the Empire's command ship. Admiral Tyron listened to the message. He laughed. Commander Reek chuckled. These humans are amusing. They think they can scare us. Chun smirked. Send the fleet forward. Show them what true power looks like. The first move from the Empire's warships. Hundreds of fighters launched toward Earth, their engines roaring like distant thunder. They targeted key locations, military bases, communication centers, power grids. But as they neared the planet, something unexpected happened. One by one, the Empire's fighters vanished. No explosions, no warnings, just gone. On the command ship, alarms blared. Technicians scrambled to understand what was happening. Admiral, an officer shouted, we've lost contact with the first wave. Siren frowned. What do you mean, lost contact? The officer's hand shook. They just disappeared, sir. No wreckage, no distress signals, nothing. For the first time in decades, Admiral Tyron felt something unfamiliar. A cold chill ran down his spine. The humans had technology the Empire did not understand. The fear sets in on Earth. General Cole watched the satellite feeds with a cold, satisfied expression. It worked. Lieutenant Hayes grinned. They're confused, scared. Good, Cole replied. Let them wander up in space. The Empire's fleet hesitated. More fighters were loomed. More fighters disappeared. A deep silence settled on the command bridge. Then a second message came from Earth. This is your final warning. Leave now. Admiral Tyron clenched his fists. His fleet was the strongest in the galaxy. No primitive species had ever defied him. Prepare the main cannons, he growled. If they want war, we'll give them war. The first strike. Admiral Siren stood on the bridge of his command ship, fists clenched, eyes fixed on the blue-green planet below. Earth had just defied the Galactic Empire twice. Enough of this, he growled. Target their capital cities. I want them to understand what happens when they resist. Commander Reek hesitated. Sir, something isn't right. We don't know what happened to our fighters. Maybe we should. Siren shot him a glare. Maybe we should crush them before they think they can challenge us. Rex swallowed and gave the order. In an instant, 5 knots positioned themselves over Earth, their colossal cannons charging with energy. These weapons had turned entire planets to rubble before. No species had ever survived a direct hit. This was the Empire's first strike. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. The cannons fired blinding beams of destruction straight toward Earth. Billions of lives were about to end, except nothing happened. The beams of death stopped mid-space, flickering, twisting, then vanishing, as if they had never existed on the command deck. Stunned silence. Zen's jaw tightened. What just happened?" One of the technicians frantically checked the readings. "Sir, the energy was redirected. Our weapons didn't hit the planet, they were absorbed." "Impossible," Siren barked. "No primitive species has technology that can." He stopped because now something was moving toward them. Earth's counterattack from the darkness beyond. The moon, something enormous emerged. It wasn't on any of the Empire scans. It hadn't registered on any of their radars. And yet there it was, a fleet, sleek black warships, their surfaces shifting like liquid metal. Silent, deadly. Earth wasn't defenseless. They had been waiting. A single transmission was sent to the Empire's fleet. "You were warned then." Without hesitation, Earth struck back. The battle begins. The first blast came from nowhere. A single pulse of energy slammed into one of the Empire's dreadnoughts. It didn't explode, it didn't burn, it simply ceased to exist. 1 second it was there. The next, just empty space. Panic, air of aid. Across the Empire's fleet, officers shouted, alarms blared, screens flashed. "Red, what?" "Woda!" Commander Reek screamed. "Sir, we lost the Vengeance." No distress signal, no debris, just gone. Siren's blood turned cold. This wasn't just a battle, this was a hunt, and humans were the predators. The enemy fleet moved like ghosts, appearing and vanishing in the blink of an eye. No heat signatures, no visible thrusters. They shouldn't even exist. The Empire had faced countless civilizations before, but they had never fought anything like this. Psychological warfare. Then something worse happened. The lights inside Kian's command ship flickered. A deep, distorted voice echoed through the speakers. "Not human, not alien, something else. You were given a warning. You chose war. Now we choose how it ends." Siren's officers stared at each other, their alien skin pale with fear. Then the screens in front of them changed. It wasn't battlefield data anymore, it was their own faces. Their faces from moments ago, recorded inside the ship, except the reflections moved differently. Siren watched in horror as his own reflection smiled at him. But he wasn't smiling. "Shut it off," he roared. The screens flickered again. The words "too late" appeared. And then the ship's artificial gravity failed. The Empire's worst nightmare. Admiral Siren's breath came in short, sharp gasps. His control panel blinked erratically. The ship's gravity still flickering on and off. The bridge was a mess. Officers floating helplessly. Alarms wailing, screens glitching with strange symbols no one could recognize. "Repeat," he bellowed, gripping the edge of his command chair to steady himself. No one answered. Then the lights flickered again, and this time the shadows moved. Not the crew, the shadows themselves. Second in command, Commander Reek stared at the floor in horror. His shadow wasn't his anymore. It twisted, stretched, then looked up at him. "Reeks!" screamed. "Shields up, fiery thing!" "Tyron!" roared the bridge crew, scrambled to obey. But something was wrong. The controls weren't responding. The weapon systems were offline. Then one of the officers gasped, his trembling claw pointing at the main viewport. Tyron turned, and for the first time in his long, brutal career he felt true fear. Earth's secret weapon outside. The human fleet had barely moved. They weren't attacking, they weren't dodging. They were watching. Then something bigger emerged. A massive dark structure drifted from the shadow of Earth's moon. It had no engines, no visible weapons, just a towering monolithic presence. The Empire sensors tried to scan it, but the results were nonsense. No map detected, no energy readings, no life signs. It was like it wasn't even there. But Cheyenne instincts screamed otherwise. "White, is he AA2?" he whispered. Then his ship's communication system activated. A single chilling message appeared on every screen: "Welcome to the abyss." Then everything went dark. "The fall begins." The command deck of Tyron's ship descended into chaos. Officers shouted, emergency lights flashed, systems crashed one after another. "Sir," an officer yelled, "we're being dragged toward that thing." "Reverse thrusters," Siren barked. Unresponsive. Panics spread like wildfire. More dreadnoughts began losing control, pulled toward the massive black structure. The Empire's fleet wasn't just under attack, it was being devoured. One ship, the Dominator, tried to fire its thrusters at full power to escape. For a moment it looked like it might break free, then before their eyes it vanished. No explosion, no wreckage, just gone. The crew froze. This wasn't war. This was something far worse, a message from Earth. Then, against the sheer terror of what was happening, one voice cut through the darkness, a human voice, calm, cold, unshaken. This is your last chance. Withdraw, and you will be allowed to live. Stay, and you will learn what true fear is. Silence followed. No threats, no demands, just the certainty of annihilation. Admiral Siren's mind raced. The Empire had fought countless wars, crushed hundreds of civilizations, burned entire worlds, but never had they faced an enemy that didn't just want to win. Humans wanted to send a message. They had been underestimated. Now the Empire was paying the price. Siren clenched his fists. He had two choices: retreat and live, or fight and face whatever nightmare Earth had unleashed when the hunters become the prey. Admiral Siren stood frozen, his claws gripping the armrests of his command chair so tightly they cracked. The void outside his ship felt wrong. His entire fleet, mighty dreadnoughts, world burning warships, elite Imperial forces, was being pulled toward an impossible structure. No engines, no signals, no visible weapons. Yet one by one his ships were vanishing. And then came the voice. This is your last chance. Calm, absolute, inescapable. The humans weren't negotiating, they were declaring. Siren's officers looked to him, eyes wide with terror. The bridge was silent except for the flickering alarms and the distant, eerie hum of the monolithic structure, drawing them in. Then a new alert flashed across the consoles. The first victim. Drot. Obsidian, Shen NL lowest Drot XXX errors. NL lest Dranot the Kins, NL lest one. After another, his warships were disappearing, not destroyed, not disabled, gone. Diron's breathing was ragged. The Empire ships were designed to withstand black holes, plasma storms, quantum anomalies. But this CNN errors I went to. Aor Epor, he roared. His chief scientist Veltra had gone deathly pale. His hands trembled over the console, eyes darting back and forth as he struggled to make sense of the data. Servera's voice cracked. It's not a weapon, it's his throat closed. His eyes widened in sheer horror. It's alive, the living weapon. Silence fell over the bridge. Zahn felt his stomach twist. You mean the structure? Veltra nodded slowly. It's not just metal and circuits, it's something else. The material, it's changing, adapting, feeding on what. Veltra turned his eyes hollow on us. A fresh wave of terror washed over the crew. Siren shook his head violently. No, that's impossible. No species has technology like that even the ancients never. That's because it's not just technology, Veltra whispered. It's something more. Then the lights flickered again, and the walls of the bridge shifted. Something was already inside. A sickening creak filled the air. The metal breathed. The once smooth, cold interior of the ship's bridge now rippled like liquid, as if something was crawling just beneath the surface. One of the officers, Commander Kither, took a step back. What the hell is a black tendril shot from the wall? Kither didn't even have time to scream. It pierced through his armor, his flesh, his very soul. His eyes went wide as he convulsed, his body fading into static like he was being rewritten by something unnatural. Then he disappeared. The tendril retracted, vanishing into the wall as if nothing had happened. The crew was too shocked to move. Siren's mind shattered with one brutal realization: the enemy was already inside the ship. The final choice, a deep, inhuman voice filled the bridge. You took your shot, Admiral. Now it's our turn. The structure outside pulsed. The black void surrounding them seemed to breathe. The Empire's mighty fleet, the force meant to conquer Earth, wasn't just being destroyed, it was being consumed. Chiron had to decide: retreat, flee back to the Empire, warn the others, or fight back, knowing they might never leave this cursed battlefield. His claws hovered over the emergency order controls. He had seconds. What would he choose? No escape from Earth. Admiral Siren's claws hovered over the emergency controls. His mind screamed at him to run, retreat, survive. But his pride whispered that the Empire never fled. But this wasn't war. This was something else. Outside the bridge window, his aunt's mighty fleet had been reduced To echoes and shadows, warships that had conquered entire civilizations were now silent, their signals lost to an unknown abyss. The massive living construct ahead of them pulsed again, and then the message arrived, one final transmission. From one of the lost dreadnoughts, a message. Message from the abyss. The console flickered violently, static crackling. Through the bridge, then a distorted voice broke through, warped, desperate, and filled with something Siren had never heard in an Imperial officer before. Pure, raw terror. Do you not resist it? Knows it, sees it, takes the crew. Froze. Thyron's blood ran cold. Then the screen showed footage, a corridor inside one of the dreadnoughts. Flickering lights. Silence. Then movement. Not soldiers, not invaders, something else. The walls rippled like liquid, dark veins pulsing through the steel. Shadows twisted, unnaturally moving against the laws of physics. Then a figure stumbled into view. Commander Rose, one of the finest warriors in the fleet, but he was not himself. His eyes were black voids, his body shaking, twitching, as if something inside him was rewiring his very existence. He opened his mouth and screamed, but the sound that came out wasn't his. It was a chorus of voices, and then the feed cut to black. Earth's true power. Xan's breath came in short, ragged gasps. We need to leave now, he roared, but before his command could be delayed, the ship lurched violently. The darkness outside wasn't just consuming ships, it was spreading. Their own hull began to shift, morphing, coming alive. The metal groaned, rearranging itself, changing, and then the voice returned. You were warned. The lights flickered, the crew screamed, and Siren realized a horrifying truth. There was no escape. They hadn't entered Earth's battlefield. They had entered Earth's trap. The truth behind the trap. Admiral Siren's claws dug into the armrests of his chair as the ship groaned like a living beast. The walls pulsed, the floor shifted, and his crew screamed as their own vessel betrayed them. Report, Siren bellowed, but no one could respond. His officers were no longer themselves. Veltra, his chief scientist, was convulsing, his eyes flickering between black void and blinding white. His mouth opened, but his voice wasn't his own. You ignored the warning. Now you will understand. The ship shook violently. Siren turned to the viewing window. What he saw shattered his mind. A fleet consumed. The mighty warships of the Galactic Empire, once feared across the stars, were twisting, morphing, their sleek hulls warped like melting wax, turning into something unnatural. Xiron's own flagship was no different. The command console's blood black tendrils. The metal beneath his feet quivered. A low hum echoed through the walls, not from engines but from something alive. And then the shadows moved from the corners of the bridge. Dark figures emerged. They wore no armor, they carried no weapons, yet Siren felt a terror he had never known, because they were his crew. Or at least they used to be. Humanity's ultimate evolution. For his body jerked unnaturally as a new voice emerged from his throat, one that sounded inhuman yet familiar. You thought Earth was just another conquest. The bridge shook. You thought humanity was weak. The walls rippled, shifting into unknown materials. But we have changed, we have evolved. And now you are part of us. Siren's heart pounded as the truth struck him like a plasma blast. The humans had not just built a defense, they had become something more, something far beyond biological life, a fusion of mind-machine. And something else, something the Empire could never understand. They hadn't just been defending Earth, they had been waiting, luring the Empire into their trap. A choice no admiral should face. The shadows closed in. Xan could feel them reaching for him, ready to rewrite him. But then everything stopped. The voice spoke once more. You have one final choice, Admiral. The shadows paused. The ship's decay slowed. Join us or be erased. Xan looked around. His crew, his loyal officers, the finest warriors of the Empire, were gone, replaced by something else, something more. The Galactic Empire had never known fear, but for the first time in its long history, it was about to. The fall of the Empire. Admiral Kaon's claws trembled as the voice echoed through the ship. Join us or be erased. The bridge was silent except for the eerie hum of the living ship. His officers, his crew, were no longer themselves. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light. Their bodies, still waiting. The mighty Galactic Empire had fought wars for millennia. They had never faced an enemy like this, because this was not war. This was assimilation, the Emperor's last order. A weak signal flickered on the admiral's holo display. The Emperor himself, his royal figure, stood tall, draped in golden robes, but Siren could see the fear in his piercing yellow eyes. Admiral, the Emperor's voice wavered. What is happening? Xion swallowed hard. The humans, they are not what we thought. They are something more, something unstoppable. Static crackled, then a scream. The Emperor turned, his eyes widening in horror as his own guards collapsed, their bodies convulsed, black veins spreading across their skin. Their voices merged into a chorus, and then silence. The signal cut. The Emperor, the ruler of 1,000 worlds, was gone. The Empire had fallen in a matter of minutes. The final choice. Thawne clenched his fist. She had one last chance. His claws hovered over the ship's manual. Override. Self-destruct. If he could take himself down, maybe, just maybe, he could stop this plague of assimilation from spreading further. He slammed the activation sequence. Error. A single word appeared on the screen. Denied. The ship spoke to him. You do not need to fight. You do not need to die. You can become more. The walls pulsed. The bridge shifted. A single shape emerged from the darkness. A human, but no, not human anymore. Eyes glowing with intelligence beyond comprehension. A body that shifted between flesh and machine like a living god. It smiled. Welcome to the new era, Admiral. The end of the old galaxy. Siren closed his eyes, accepting his fate. The Galactic Empire was no more. It had not been destroyed. It had been reborn as something greater, as something human.